All right, all right. How's everybody doing? We're going to let people filter in. Sure, we're all set here. Let me work on some of that social media. How's everyone going? Mars, man, how's it going? We're reaching our week
What's up,
2.
guys? Yeah, man. Week 2 officially feels like we're was it week 3 with all these week 0 games and
I
stuff like
know.
that. But yeah, man, we're back at it. This is
But,
our prime time.
yep.
No one no one hits Wednesday nights like us. No
No,
one can no one there's we should call Wednesday prime time. And it's prime time with Fan Sports New York.
absolutely. And welcome, JMay1812. How's it going? Thank you for joining. All right.
Yeah,
All right, we're
make
going to
sure you
let
guys hit
people
that thumbs
filter
up.
in. I'm sorry?
Make sure you hit that thumbs up, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Help us spread the algorithm.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you hit that thumbs up and sub if you haven't already. This is our week 2 preview show. And if you're new here, we're going to be talking about, usually in the beginning, we'll talk about like some any big news as the season goes along. We'll talk about, the standings and stuff like that. We'll put it up on the screen. And since it's such early in the season, we don't want to dive into that kind of stuff yet. We're just going to dive into our game picks, talk about some of the big matchups. I'm trying to set up some film for this particular show on a couple of those big games. So we'll do that. And then we'll answer any questions that you guys have at the end. This is going to be posted to our YouTube channel. So if you miss any of the live stuff, don't worry. This will be posted on the show and you can catch up on anything that you've missed. With that said, guys, Ronan Hunter, how's it going? Appreciate you for joining in. If you guys have any questions, make sure you throw it in the chat, and we'll answer them. If you're going to say, "Hey, pick this game," we're going to pick all the games. So don't use your question for that. Use your questions for anything else. And when we talk about the games, what we really like, Mars, if you agree, put in the chat who you think is going to win. Try to keep as unbiased as possible. So that's great. And before we dive into it, Mars, let's give a congratulations to our teams of the week, which we post on our Patreon after our reviews, and we put up our standings. And if you want to join our Patreon for some added benefits, they're in the description of these videos. We really do appreciate our Patreon supporters. They are kind of the blood life of us to continue to produce as good a content as we can, and you get some additional perks. So appreciate you guys for tuning in, obviously for free stuff, but also our Patreon members are a huge support, and we're very thankful for them. So let's do it, Mars. We're going to start. Last week we started at AA, and then we went all the way down to the Hudson Valley Football League. This week we'll start at the Hudson Valley Football League and go the opposite direction. All right, so I'm putting up the Hudson Valley Football League schedule right now. And if there's any audio issues or anything, guys, you just let us know. We'll fix things as things go. But let's start diving into it, Mars. First game we're going to talk about in the Hudson Valley Football League is Peekskill 0-1 at Poughkeepsie, who's 0-2. Peekskill lost last week 26-0 versus Tappan Zee in a rematch of last year's Hudson Valley Football League championship. And Poughkeepsie lost 14-55 versus Walter Panis last week. And in this game, I'm going to go with Tappan Zee. Tappan Zee, Peekskill. I'm thinking of last week's game. I'm going to go with Peekskill in the first matchup because offensively they were really hurt last week with penalties. They were able to drive the ball at some points, make some big plays, but then was brought back by penalties. And I think this week they're going to have an easier time getting some big plays out of the running game. And so for me, I'm going to go with Peekskill. Poughkeepsie defensively, they've given up 89 points in the last 2 games. So defensively has been a real struggle for them starting off the year. And with that, I'm going to go with Peekskill. They do this pressure defense. I think it's going to make enough plays. I'm going Peekskill first game.
Yeah, you see, the really tough thing about this is that obviously, having a really tough loss against Tappan Zee, Peekskill really is looking for that bounce back game. And a lot of teams that struggle in that first week they always try to find the person that's going to stop the bleeding. And I really feel like Peekskill, as much as they struggled last week against a really good Tappan Zee team, I do think this is their bounce back week. I'm also going to go with Peekskill here. All right. Just add a little quick thing, just to add a little tension to the air. I am starting a poll for everyone out there to see who will win in game picks this week, either Frank or myself. So I'm gonna put that in the chat. Let the those out in the public to go and see who will win this week. I
Yeah,
want to
absolutely.
see
If
what
you're
people's
joining the
votes are.
chat, who do you think is going to win in game picks? For context, which that was a good reminder right there, Mars. Last week, I went 18-9. 19-9. Marsman went 18-9. He picks one less game than I do. So similar losses that we had last week. So we're neck and neck. We're going to go by win percentage at the end. And I'm also competing with our neighbors next door with Lohud. And I know Kevin Devaney's been doing some picks too. So we're going to see at the end of the year who is the ultimate picker. And Chad knows it's going to be me. So make sure you hit those votes, see what it's going to be. But let's keep going towards it. Having some fun as always. Next one up, Hudson Valley Football League. We got Walter Panis 1-0 at Horace Greeley, who is 2-0. And Walter Panis, as I mentioned in the previous game, won 55-14 versus Poughkeepsie. Greeley won 31-14 versus Putt Valley. Both coming off impressive games. And to me, in this one, I like to see that Panis, who really struggled last year offensively, really exploded onto the scene. They had, 5 different players score touchdowns. Generoso with 3 of them. But I'm going to go with Greeley. They won probably against the C favorite last week in impressive fashion. They have scored 30-plus points in 2 straight games. They did have a couple turnovers, which is a big bugaboo that Greeley's had the last 2 years. But with their quarterback, Ash, who has had 5 touchdowns so far this year, Blakesley with 3 receiving touchdowns, Weinstein with 3 touchdowns, and this defense with Sala, Kaplo, Bloom, very active defensively. Greeley has been pretty impressive the first 2 games. I'm going with Greeley, Mars.
Yeah, I really thought that Greeley had a great showing, especially against a tough Putnam Valley team that, like you said, is considered to be a favorite alongside Dobbs Ferry and C. And I feel like with Greeley having these types of weapons like Osh and others, the offense is clicking, defense has been playing tough, and now you're playing against a Walter Panis team that felt like offensively was unbeatable right last week, scoring 55 points. But I'm also going to go with Greeley here. I feel like they're playing above the level in which some of their competition is right now, and I feel like they're on a hot streak, 2-0. I think they're also playing at home, which also does help. The Quakers out there, the Wild Quakers are all ready to go. So I'm thinking that Greeley's going to win this game.
Yeah. Next one up, we have Hudson Valley Football League. In a non-league game, we have Long Island Lutheran, who's 2-0, at Portchester, who's 1-1. So I hate these cross teams because I love to study teams, and so I have to study a team that I don't have a lot of film and stuff on. So looking at Long Island, though, their offense has scored 30-plus points, Mars, in 2 straight games. They had over 500 yards last week. Now, the defense has given up 20-plus points and some big rush yards that they've allowed. But when I look at Portchester, they won 27-14 versus Magnus last week. The offense is predicated on the run. They got to shorten this game because on the other side, the offense is extremely high-powered. I am going to go with Long Island Lutheran in this one. Listen, John Poletti has had 249 yards rushing for Portchester. He's had, I think, around 400 yards the first 2 games of the season. He has been an absolute beast. But my concern is Portchester defensively versus this high-powered Long Island Lutheran team. I don't think they're going to make enough stops in this one. I'm going to go with Long Island.
And I feel like I'm gonna stick with the Section 1 team here. I'm gonna go with Portchester.
Hudson Valley Football League. They're not Section 1.
Hudson Valley Football, not Section 1. Hudson Valley Football League. Portchester, obviously in the local area. That's what I meant to say. I'd rather go with Portchester and then go with this Long Island Lutherans all over down the island themselves. So I'm gonna go with Portchester here. I feel like obviously the fact that they do have some strong powered offensive weapons like Poletti that can really make some noise. 249 rushing yards last week is incredible, and I feel like that's going to be the driving force. I think this defense needs to step up, and I feel like that's going to be really what sets the tone here is this rush offense.
Yep, I just got a question. When is Edgemont? Well, Edgemont is right now. We're going to choose the Hudson Valley Football League B crossover, which is Tappan Zee 1-1 at Edgemont, who is 0-2. And starting with Tappan Zee, they won 26-0 at Peekskill last week in the rematch for the Hudson Valley Football League championship from last season. Edgemont lost 12-27 to Briarcliff Hamilton football program. And this one, again, is a tough one because Tappan Zee playing, they're doing these crossover with the Section 1 teams. Edgemont, offensively last week, it starts with the running game with them, right? They have a very strong runner in Carmine Casino, had 155 yards and a touchdown last week. Defensively, they have multiple guys. They like to play this pressure defense. They bring a lot of pressures. And again, they're going to put their defensive backs, the DBs, on an island at times because of their aggressiveness. They want to force negative plays. Forcing turnovers is going to be so important for Edgemont. But offensively, they've turned the ball over a few times, which I think has really hurt them. I am going to go with Tappan Zee in this one. Listen, it was a slow start offensively in the first half for them, but in the second half, they were able to run the ball. And Tofa, their running back, had 3 rushing touchdowns last week, also made a lot of plays defensively. Again, you're going to see a lot of pressures. So, Tappan Zee faced the pressure defense in Tappan Zee. I think they're going to be well-versed now with Edgemont coming with similar pressures that they can get the ball out of their hands quickly. Look for Cavalian and Pisoni to make some plays in the passing game. Mars, I'm going to go with Tappan Zee.
Yeah, see, this is a tough one for me, mainly because of the fact that, when you get these types of crossover games, it's really tough to see talent levels and where they are placed and how it looks. But I feel like Tappan Zee is kind of, their defense is really what's been impressing me the most so far. And I really think that they actually have that momentum on their side because they obviously, Peekskill being as good as they were last year, and now you're seeing Tappan Zee seeming like they are, other than Greeley, to be the team to beat in the HVFL. And I feel like they kind of have that defensive ability to snuff teams out, right? And I feel like Edgemont needs to kind of limit the mistakes. They need to step up themselves on defense and really, like you said before, pressure the quarterback. They need to get their offense back on the field and force some short drives and just get their guys more options and more chances. And if they could do that, then they have a chance. But I just think Tappan Zee's defense is really stout, and I'm going to go with Tappan Zee here.
All right, so now we are going to move. And again, guys, appreciate you. I know people are filtering in. Don't worry if you miss anything. This is going to be reposted. You can go back. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you put those votes in on who do you think is going to have more wins on game picks
you finally took the lead on the polls. I don't know what.
Finally, people are smartening up a little bit. Let's move now. Again, we just did the Hudson Valley Football League. And if you guys have questions, make sure you put in the chat. We'll get to it at the end of our game picks. Let's continue, Mars, and we'll talk now the C&D class. And first one I want to talk about is the CD matchup between Tuckahoe, who's 1-1, at Putt Valley, who is 0-2. And listen, when I talk about Tuckahoe, they lost 0-34 to Valhalla. We mentioned before that Greeley, that Putt Valley lost 14-31 to Greeley. And starting with Tuckahoe, I did not see Connor Bryce last week, who's a big part of this rush offense. And this was a run-heavy offense that had 300 yards in week 0 to only 79 yards last week. And so this O-line really needs to bounce back. The problem is Putt Valley has a pretty tough run defense. So this is going to be not an easy team to run against. But I'm interested to see how Tuckahoe rebounds. I mean, they have a couple guys in O'Gerty, and if Connor Bryce gets back, and this offensive line with a veteran group that really needs to reestablish themselves this week. Defensively, Mars, they gave up over 200 yards last week. Now, when I look at Putt Valley, they had some couple of guys injured. Caden Glenn, I didn't see play, which is such an important part of their team on both sides of the ball. But they have other guys, to me, who can run the football. And that's why in this matchup, I am going to go with Putt Valley. They really need to win to get back on track. They started off really slow last week and started to build things up. This is a defense that can force some turnovers. They have to prevent, Tuckahoe from running on them, force them into being a passing team. I think they do, and that's why I'm going to go with Putt Valley.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to agree. I feel like Putt Valley has had some really tough opponents just to start out the season, and I feel like their 0-2 record does not reflect the team that they are. And I feel like the fact that they're going to be at home, they're going to have that, like you said, that rush offense, the defense that's been stout against the run, right? They just need to kind of limit the mistakes, rely on their offensive line to really drive this game forward, own the time possession, slow it down in their favor. And I feel like Putt Valley is going to kind of win a really good bounce back game that really will kind of set them in the right spot. So I'm also going to go with Putt Valley.
Next game, let's go C matchup. This is a non-league again, a crossover with another team outside the area. We have Morristown Beard 2-2 at Dobbs Ferry, who's 1-1. Don't have a lot of insight into Morristown. I did some research on them, but I'm going to focus in on Dobbs Ferry, who they won 40-8 versus Hastings last week. Offensively, Mars, we know about this offense. They're very predicated on the run. They do wing T concepts. They do option concepts. But I didn't see their veteran quarterback in Kevin Hartnett. I don't know his status. Again, we don't get injury reports. But again, he is such a huge part of this team and this offense. Yet, they had last week, Jackson Kearns, who stepped in for him, had a very strong game. He had 3 touchdowns. They rushed for over 200 yards, and they had 6 players score a touchdown. If they can get that kind of group effort, they're going to need to replace a superstar player like they had at the quarterback spot. Again, don't know the status there. If he plays, that helps even more. Defensively, they forced 3 turnovers last week. This is a defense that's only given up about 14.5 points through the first 2 games of the year. With that said, I'm going to go with Dobbs Ferry. Control the game here, play strong defense, have multiple guys contribute. I'm going Dobbs Ferry.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of the tale of what Dobbs Ferry is most known for and what their game plan is. And I feel like it's just about slowing the game down, right, and kind of just owning up front. And like you said, the fact that this offensive line was paving the way or several people to score means that there is a plethora of talent on this team, and it really does rely on the guys up front to really move bodies, move humans out of the way. And I'm also going to go with Dobbs Ferry. I feel like they do have what it takes to kind of own the line of scrimmage, especially in this non-league game. I feel like Dobbs Ferry can really show something here.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. I think, this next one is probably the most interesting one to me in this class, and that is a seeding matchup. We have Valhalla, who's 1-0 at Haldane, who is 2-0. And last week, Valhalla, they really surprised me. I thought things would be a little slow offensively. They won 34-0 versus Tuckahoe, and offensively, they rushed for over 230 yards. Special teams can also be a huge factor in this game as well. Just keep that in mind. Defensively, they limited a high-powered rush attack to 79 yards and less than 100 yards passing. So it was a strong performance on both sides of the ball. Now, can they get pressure on a young quarterback on the Haldane side? That's going to be the big question. Luke Foyset, Mars, keep an eye on him. He had 4 touchdowns last week. This is such an important two-way player for Valhalla. And Tyler Ratty, another one. They are focused in on the run. But when I look at Haldane, they won 55-28 versus Woodlands. Falau Faye, who was a Frank's finest, 2 kick return touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. If they can limit the turnovers, I think they'll be able to pass the ball a little bit on a tough Valhalla defense. The question I have is, can Haldane stop the run enough? They struggled against the pass last week. They have multiple guys who can run, like Gogler and Brody Corliss. And then, if they can limit the turnovers, could they make a couple plays in the passing game with their young quarterback throwing to Jake Thomas and Faye? I'm going to go with Haldane. I think this is going to be a very interesting game. Valhalla, they were very impressive. If they win here, they're going to be talked about as one of the teams that can really compete in the C League. But I am going to go with Haldane. I think Haldane makes just enough plays defensively, slowing down the run, forcing Valhalla to pass.
And Dan, we actually have a lot of great games to talk about this week, but this is probably one of the most interesting ones, in my opinion, because of the fact that you have both teams had some great offenses showing. Valhalla really just blew the door down, right? Blew the hinges off when it came to defense and offensive play as combined. And now they're heading into Haldane and really heading into into enemy territory, heading to dangerous a spot to play against another team that's already hot, 2-0, right? And now is Valhalla going to be able to bounce back or not bounce back, but continue their momentum going forward? And I think they will. I think Valhalla is going to kind of set the stage for them to be in the spotlight. And I feel like it's going to really rely on the rush offense. Like you said, I think the defense has been so far has been great, and I really think it's going to kind of show out in this game. I think it's going to be one of the tightest games we have so far, but I think Valhalla is going to win this one.
Got a question, Mount Vernon? Yes, we'll get to that game once we get to the AA. We're starting from the Hudson Valley Football League going up because last week we started at AA. So that's how we're going to do it. We're on the last game for C, and that is a league game. We have Woodlands 1-1 at Hastings. That's 0-2. Woodlands, they lost 28-55 to Haldane, like I just mentioned previously. And Hastings lost 8-40 at Dobbs Ferry last week. So to me, in this one between the two teams, I'm going to go with Woodlands, Mars. Offensively, they had 292 yards of offense. The drops really hurt them last week. They also gave up a couple special teams touchdowns, which were also pretty much big daggers to them. But I love the way that they can pass and run the ball. They have a high-powered offense, in my opinion, from Woodlands, from their quarterback in Campbell, who had 218 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Locke struggled running the ball. I think he has a better opportunity to run the football this week. And Jamison Stevens has started the season really strong. Touchdown last week, 2 sacks defensively. Keep an eye on him. I feel like Hastings' defense, they've given up back-to-back weeks of 40-plus points. I think Woodlands scores a lot of points in this one. I'm going with Woodlands.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also gonna go with Woodlands. I feel like if they limited the mistakes, then like with the special teams touchdowns and they took that stuff away, the game would have looked a lot closer. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people look past. And obviously, having a great special teams is such a key component of the game. But I feel like I don't think Woodlands is gonna make the same mistakes again. And if they do, then they're obviously gonna lose. But the idea is, I feel like if they're gonna keep things under wraps, if they keep things on tight. And I feel like they're going to be all right. I feel like Woodlands is going to win this game.
All right. So that was the C and D. And guys, don't worry if you miss anything. Like I've mentioned a few times, if you miss anything, this is going to be posted to the channel. You can always rewind, go back to it, and see all our picks there. Share clips. People have already memed, not meme, but have taken shots at us, Mars. I'm looking at US Lake.
Who was talking trash?
I'm looking at US Lake. We'll get to them in this next segment because we're about to hit B. Yeah, we're about to hit B. And guys, thank you guys as always for watching. I know people are still going in and out. Make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you throw any questions that you have in the chat. Let us know when we're picking the games. Make sure you vote on who you think is going to win this week. And also, when we're talking about a game, put in the chat who you think is going to win. So let's continue, Mars. Now we're getting into the B League. And first one I want to talk about is Ardsley, who's 0-1 at Nanuet, who's 1-0. And Ardsley lost 16-18 versus Westlake. Nanuet won 21-7 versus Sleepy Hollow. And this is another interesting game. I feel like B has a lot of interesting games this week. This is one of them. And the interesting part to me is, two teams that I think their identity is starts with running the football. And Ardsley struggled with that last week. And so they had to rely on the pass. They couldn't get Dulcine going. They couldn't get a lot of movement at the point of attack to get some consistency in the run game. So they had to rely on the passing game. And there were some impressive plays by their young quarterback in Kaplan coming up as a junior. He had 2 touchdowns, but also had 3 INTs. And these turnovers were absolute killers versus Westlake. They also had a fumble that the defense returned for a touchdown. So to me, that was the key on their loss last week. They cannot turn the ball over like that, or they'll lose again. I think this week they'll have a better opportunity to run the ball. I know Nanuet also had 235 yards rushing last week with guys like Duffy, Flowers, and Moran. This is going to be, I believe, a run fest once more, and the team that can force the other quarterback to throw the ball the most, I think, is the team that loses. So to me, I'm going to go with Ardsley. It's another defensive running football slugfest. I think Kaplan reduces the mistakes this week, plays a cleaner game, and I think Ardsley comes away with the victory.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the same feeling I have, is because I feel like I don't think Kaplan will make the same amount of mistakes when given the same opportunities again. I feel like 3 interceptions. I know for a younger quarterback that, when you have a bad game, you really have a bad game. And like you said, and I feel like Nanuet is going to be a more of a one-dimensional type of team. They're going to overload the box. They're going to try to get the outside. They're going to try to get the advantages, and they're going to try to run the ball like down your face, right? And I feel like Ardsley's defensive scheme is now going to be predicated to just limiting the run offense. And so it kind of opens them up to say, if we can limit the rush offense and just kind of get our guys the ball again, then I feel like Ardsley has the advantage of being able to diversify what type of play calling they want to do. And I feel like that's what Ardsley's main bread and butter is, right? Being able to kind of hit you many different ways, right? And I feel like Ardsley is going to have that advantage. They're going to listen to mistakes. I feel like Ardsley is going to win this game.
All right, I'm going to mark those down. We agree there. The next one is another very interesting one, and that is Pearl River, who's 2-0, at Pleasantville, who is 0-1. And Pearl River, they won 42-14 versus Henhud last Thursday, so they had that kind of extra couple days. Pleasantville lost 33-7 versus Bronxville. And, Mars, when I'm picking this game, this was one I went back and forth on since Monday, all the way up to about 10 minutes before this show on who I wanted to pick here. And there's a couple reasons. Number one, let's start with Pleasantville. They got their butt kicked. There's no question about it. Now, teams that have a lot of pride, which Pleasantville does, usually doesn't get their butts kicked 2 times in a row, right? They're going to come with some extra edge. The question that I have, the concern, is what is their identity? Offensively, we know they want to run the ball. We don't know the status of Louis Sadow, who is an extremely important player on both sides of the ball for them. Defensively, offensively, there was a lot relying. If he can't play offensively, Hudzinski is probably going to be the key back for them. But they have to get some more involvement in the passing game, which they only had one completion, whether that's Rizzi, whether it's Chalice, I don't know, whether it's a rotation. They have to get more consistency in the passing game. And to help all that, the offensive line has to play better. And Pearl River can get after you defensively. So this is an offensive line who we're talking about who's playing quarterback, who's running the football. How about we know what the offensive lineman is? We need to play a better football game and open things up for both sides, right? That's my key for Pleasantville. And defensively, they gave up a crazy amount of rush yards, which is unheard of for Pleasantville. So to me, it's lining up and bringing, again, winning your one-on-one matchups. Guys like McPhee, I thought had a pretty strong game. There were times, yes, probably could have been better, but McPhee was very active. Who are these D linemen? Who are these linebackers who are going to be active in this one? They need to force Pearl River to be a passing team, and that's where the veterans are in the secondary. Those are the guys who are going to have to, again, play probably some more man coverage because they're going to have to load the box against a Pearl River offense that had Amundsen 287 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. With all that said, Mars, I am going to go with Pearl River. As Pleasantville continues to find its identity, Pearl River is playing good football. I mentioned Amundsen, 287 yards and 2 touchdowns. They used 2 quarterbacks in Whalen and Lanise. Lanise is a young guy. He had 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. And then they're going to bring in their tight end in Graziano, who can catch, he can line up as a tight end. He can line up in the slot. I think they try to go heavy. I think they try to test the run game of Pleasantville and try to open things up for the passing attack. You're going to see a mixed game here, but it's going to start with the running game. And as Pleasantville tries to figure itself offensively, I feel like there's going to be too much pressure on this defense. I'm going to go with Pearl River. Mars, give me your thoughts on this game. You're not going to pick it, but give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like this is obviously I'll kind of just briefly talk about both teams quick, but I feel like there's a wake-up call for Pleasantville to kind of say, you know what, like you said, they got their butts kicked, right? And I said this last week in our week 1 preview that it's going to be up to multiple guys to step up and to lead the team and to show what they can do. You had some good performances from certain players, like you said, from McPhee and others, but it wasn't enough as a coalition of players to really stop the bleeding. Like when bad things happen, it felt like no one really stopped the bleeding, and that's what led to the score getting to what it was. And I feel like that's what's going to have to happen. It's going to have to be a multiple person effort, right? And I feel like that's kind of been the mantra, or sorry, the story, whether it was Lohud or Devaney or everyone said, was, well, what's going to happen with Picard not there, right? And so as a team, do you want to be known as a team that does the team without Picard, or do you want to be known as your own team, right? And how you handle this moment, right? And I feel like that's something that a lot of people have been talking about. That's what we've been talking about. And that's going to be the question that up to Pleasantville. For Pearl River, yeah, it was a dominant win against Hen Hud, right? They are trying to cement themselves as a contender in B. They have a very interesting 2 quarterback system, right? That is, 2 guys that can really play well, right? A Whalen, a known commodity, right, that can play. And then you have Lancer, who is a young guy that can show that he has arm talent. Yeah. And so with that, it's like you have a lot of things going your way. And it's almost like, well, you're...
And don't forget the running back who had 287 yards.
287 yards, right? He dominated, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, you're going to now go into Pleasantville at a team that was embarrassed, and it's going to be a battle. Right? Yeah. You're going to have to show out again to solidify yourself as the top team in B. And for Pleasantville, it's the opposite. You got to show that you still are the top dogs. Yeah. And that, yes, you had a bad game, but you're not crumbling, right? That's kind of the story of this game.
No, I think they're the underdog now. I don't think they're the top dog. Yeah. I think they've been knocked off the pedestal. That's my opinion. It would surprise me if this was another blowout game. I think it's going to be a close game. It wouldn't shock me if either team won, but what would shock me is if this was a blowout. All right, let's continue. I already see comments. Yonkers Brave versus Yonkers Force, biggest game of the week in my opinion. It is one of the big ones. We're going to be talking about that coming up. We'll bring that up. And we also have Jake Zino. What happened with Ardsley? Listen, man, it was a close game. Congratulations to Westlake. We'll get to Westlake. I've eaten my crow on the review. We both picked Ardsley, and these things happen, Let's go to the next one. Um, we got Crone Harmon 0-1 at Byram Hills, who's 1-1. Another B matchup. In Crone Harmon, they lost 37-0 versus Rhinebeck. Byram Hills lost 21-7 versus Pelham. And for Crone Harmon, it was a struggle offensively. They couldn't get a lot of drives going. They couldn't really finish drives. Defensively, they gave up, again, a punt return touchdown, and then 4 touchdowns offensively. So it was a tough game on both sides of the ball. When we look at Byram Hills, they really did struggle to get Tyler Marscott the ball. I think they'll have a little bit easier opportunity this time around, Mars. I'm going to go with Byram Hills. They do need the running game to get going to open things up. Last week, they doubled Marscott. That someone else has to win. They did have one long touchdown pass, but outside of that, couldn't get a lot offensively. I think they have an easier time this time around, and so I'm going to go with Byram Hills to win this one.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to agree with you. I feel like Byram Hills, obviously, I feel like it was a tough loss against Pelham in the week before, and they really couldn't get anything going. I felt like they just couldn't get a run game going. Their offensive line was not playing to their potential, and I feel like because of that, it kind of caused their offense to kind of crater, right? And I feel like they need that game to kind of just to screw up essentially, and just let them kind of get their wounds, and then they have to rebuild themselves a little bit and get that, like you said, that get their identity. Kind of have to live up to to get the Hogs up front to move some bodies out of the way, create some lanes, establish the run game, and then everything else open up. So I feel like I'm going to go Byram Hills here. I feel like they're going to be able to pull that off here.
Let's talk about the next one. We have Briarcliff Hamilton football program 1-1 at Irvington, who's 1-0. When I look at Briarcliff, they won 27-12 versus Edgemont last week. Irvington had a bye week last week. So, but when you look at these two teams historically, Mars, Briarcliff has won 4 straight versus Irvington. And this is another interesting one to me because you know what? I like the balance that Briarcliff has on offense, where they can pass the ball with Vincent, who had a strong game, and they have a couple targets in Murray and Burge, who have made plays for them on the outside, and Solari running the ball. Question I have is defensively for them. And can I tell you what? Irvington, they had a shutout the week prior versus Edgemont, 18-0. And the offense had over 200 yards rushing. But turnovers could be an issue in this one. So with that being said, I'm going to go with Irvington. They had the bye week. If they can get after the quarterback and cause some pressure, I think this might be a high-scoring game here. But this might surprise folks. I'm going to go with Irvington here. Off the bye, I think they run the ball efficiently, and they make just enough plays defensively to win this one, and I think a high-scoring game. I'm going Irvington.
See, the interesting thing is usually when a team has a bye week, sure, they might get a little healthier, but they also lose that momentum of playing a full game, and now they have to wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And I feel like because of that, right, I think Briarcliff is going to win. It's going to win this game, and I feel like
too many BHs.
Because the BH is here. I think Briarcliff Hamilton football team is going to win here. I feel like they have obviously a big win last week against Edgemont, and like you said, they've won 4 straight against Irvington. And I feel like they'll limit any sort of their defense will cause some turnovers. Their offense will capitalize it. I feel like that's going to give them that edge. I'm going to go with Briarcliff.
All right, let's go to the next one. We have Hen Hud, who's 1-1 at Sleepy Hollow, who's 0-1. Then to me, this is another interesting game. Hen Hud did lose to Pearl River 42-14. It was close in the beginning, and then defensively they could not stop Pearl River. And so when I look at Sleepy Hollow, offensively it was a bit of a struggle. They had 2 turnovers. Braden Richardson is a stud on that offense. He had a receiving touchdown from Dylan Posh. But defensively, Mars, they gave up 235 yards rushing. And because of that, I'm going to go with Hen Hud here. They got to be able to stop the run. Justin Parkes has made some big plays in the first 2 games of the season. I think over 100 yards in both games. I think he continues that this week. Again, they also have that quarterback in Aboud who's a dual threat quarterback. I think the run game is going to be the big difference maker here. Braden Richardson's going to put up some big yards, but that duo of Aboud and Parkes, I think, is enough. I'm going to go with Hen Hud.
Yeah, I feel like for me, Hen Hud is probably going to win this game mainly because they have just a lot of weapons. The guys that you said are very athletic. That having multiple dudes that can really get to the outside and show their speed. I really think it's going to be about limiting the mistakes, and their defense is going to be coming at you from all angles. Right, they're going to be stunting heavy, and they're going to be causing some mistakes from obviously for Sleepy Hollow. And I feel like they just need to really just do what they do best. Right, come with speed, come with tenacity, and I feel like that's always been what Hen Hud has been known for. So I feel like they'll be able to do that. I'm going to go with Hen Hud.
All right, next up we have, let me move slower down a little bit. Next up we have Rhinebeck, 1-1 at Westlake, who's 1-0. Rhinebeck had a really nice bounce back victory last week, winning 37-0 versus Croton Harmon. Westlake won 18-16 versus Ardsley, and it had to let me know about it on Instagram. So I did see that. Don't worry, Westlake guys, I did see it. But let's start with this one. This, to me, again, Westlake was one of the most impressive teams from last week. They were on my risers list for in our team report this week, Mars. And offensively, I thought replacing 9 starters was going to be a tough task coming right out of the gate. They made it look easy. And there were some hiccups, without question. Penalties brought back a lot of big plays. But their quarterback in Legeza, 2 impressive passing touchdowns, one to DiNapoli, one to Barnett. And he looked comfortable throwing the ball. He was more, to me, an athlete playing quarterback. And when I spoke to coach, they were like, they got to refine things at the quarterback spot. But he looked comfortable, and he made some big plays for them. And defensively is where they forced 4 turnovers, had 1 defensive touchdown. You had guys like Zino, Piazza, Pipo, and multiple guys who can make plays in this defense. They stopped the run. And when they stopped the run, they put you in uncomfortable situations, and then they forced turnovers. And to me, although Rhinebeck, very impressive with Danielle Salvaderi, who leading the way for them. Quinn Byron also had a passing touchdown, rushing touchdown. This Westlake defense can be very vicious. They showed it against Ardsley. I think they show it again this week. I'm going to go with Westlake. Mars, I know your homeboys over at Rhinebeck. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't think they got it this week. I'm going Westlake.
You see that I'll kind of go into a little bit about the energy of Rhinebeck and kind of what they're capable of doing. They showed support to me, and they've proven a lot of people wrong in the past, right? And I feel like that's something that they are capable of doing. Westlake was a big win last week against Ardsley. It was a fight. They were able to force turnovers, and the question is going to be, can they continue doing that this week? And I feel like, and as much as it pains me, I don't think Rhinebeck can do it this week, mainly because of the fact that they're going into Westlake. It's a home game. Momentum's on their side, right? Their defense was stout last week. And the question is going to be, and maybe you can use this as momentum for yourselves, Rhinebeck.
It pains him to say it, Rhinebeck country.
It pains me to say it, but I don't know if you're going to be able to pull it off. Maybe use this as momentum to prove me wrong, right? Prove me wrong and say, hey, we can do it against Westlake. And that would be really interesting to see how that goes about. I feel like Westlake's defense has been pretty good. And the question is, can they continue doing that, right? If they do, then I think Westlake will win here.
I do see a couple comments coming in. Rhinebeck country's in the house, so that's always fun. Both Yonkers teams are undefeated. Yes, absolutely. We're going to get to that game. First time ever, I think, since the programs have been made that both teams are undefeated. So that's always an interesting. Pelham is underrated. Yeah, that's what we're about to get to. This is our game of the week for the smaller schools, and that is Pelham, who is 2-0, at Bronxville, who is 1-0. And this is another interesting. I think B has a nice slate of games this week, and this one, to me, is a clear game of the week. And when we talk about Pelham, they won 21-7 versus Byram Hills last week. And Bronxville obviously had that very impressive win versus Pleasantville. I said Pelham, and I said Byram Hills and Pleasantville. Okay. Yeah, so let's start with Pelham. And offensively, listen, they like to run the ball multiple ways, right? They use also a 2-quarterback system at times. One quarterback is more of a thrower compared to Kerr, who's more of their athletic and running guy. But they're going to attack you out of the spread looks to kind of empty the box a little bit. And then they love to bring these condensed formations. Well, you're going to see 2 backs, you're going to see 3 backs, you'll see 2 tight ends. And they'll use that no matter where they are in the field. People might look at it as like a red zone offense. They'll use that wherever. They want to run with physicality. And so they'll use a lot of cross flows, out of those heavy sets. And then out of the spread, you'll see a lot of read stuff. They'll do some quarterback counters. They'll do some stuff like that. And I think that's how they want to attack Bronxville, who's very big. I think they're going to have to mix things up, right? They're going to have to mess with their eyes when they go in those condensed formations with these cross flows, backs going one way versus the other, to mess with the linebacker's eyes, mess with D lineman's eyes. And then when they go into the spread, to get all these big bodies out of the box and try to open things up a little bit. And, a couple guys, when I mentioned keys in this game, Mars, and I'll let you talk about Pelham. First one on offense, spreading them out, attacking them on the edge. Some of the plays that Pleasantville had success on versus Bronxville is getting out on the edge. With some of those condensed formations getting out on the edge, and also some of the sweeps, some of the off-tackle runs, because moving those big bodies in the middle is tough. They're big, right? You have guys like McSherry in there. It's tough to move them. And that Pelham offensive line was impressive last week. So I'm looking at this offensive line. Can they move those folks? My second key to me on defense, they have to win the early down. If Bronxville's going to get in the second and medium, right, second and short, third and short, that's where they're very deadly because they want to run the football, but the play action then comes out of that. And if they're ahead of the chains, that's when disaster can uphold itself. So those are my two keys for them. Keep an eye on their quarterback in Kerr. They got these weapons in Hirsch, Romano, but defensively, Connor Bryant at the linebacker spot. Those guys are going to have to dominate in the run game if Pelham's going to have a shot. Mars, thoughts, and then I go to Bronxville, and then we got a little bit of film for the audience.
Yeah, I feel like you kind of hit around the mark. I mean, if you're Pelham, you're trying to make Bronxville feel uncomfortable, and that means to slow down this run offense and just force them to go full air raid or just full passing all the way down the field. And not saying that Bronxville can't do it, but they've proven from last game they've limited that and kind of prioritized the run game to open a play action to the tight end, and I feel like that was what was Bronxville's bread and butter last week. So I feel like if you're Pelham, you're saying, well, you know what? We're gonna beg for you to throw, right? We're gonna try to stack the box and just lower your chances of trying to break off any big runs, because that was the big thing last week against Pleasantville. It was these 60, 40 yard run touchdowns that they were just breaking off for big yards. So that's the thing. Can you limit that? Can you limit the amount of big yards, big time plays, and just try to keep the game condensed and then force Bronxville to have to throw the ball? Right? That's gonna be a big thing for me.
Yeah. Now, when I look to Bronxville, Mars, we mentioned that big win, and it was predicated on the run. They had 240 yards rushing, bringing in a lot of those big offensive linemen. They have tight ends, two of them that have good size to them. One of them, Walker Moore. And I think you're going to see that. You're going to see these heavy looks, one tight end, two backs. And they're going to try to dictate things up front and then go play action out of it. I think that's their formula for success in this game. They have two backs in Patterson and Formato that rushed for 240 yards between the two of them. Patterson's an absolute stud, but Formato also showed that, he could be a big-time back as well. So, those are a couple guys defensively. Starts with stopping the run game. And again, how they attack this offense of Pelham when they go into these different style offense, into the spread look. And again, if you see a different quarterback, not 7, the odds of pass go up, right? So how are they going to attack it? How are they going to scheme against that? To me, winning in the trenches has their biggest opportunity with guys like McSherry. Those guys can dominate up front. If they can cause some penetration, get Pelham, who can pass the ball, but if you get them in second, third, and long, that's not where they want to be. They want to be ahead of the chains as well. They want to be dictating things, winning the trenches and being ahead of the chains. So that, to me, I mentioned the two big keys. Offensively, utilize play action, right? They love to run the ball. Utilize play action on early downs. You're going to see some heavy boxes, I think, from Pelham. I think they're going to stack the box to try to slow down Patterson and Formato. Use the play action game, and out of these condensed formations, you could hit some big chunk plays down the field. And defensively, keep an eye on the personnel, Mars. Those are the big things to me. Their young quarterback in McMurray on Bronxville did not make mistakes last week. If he can continue that play clean game, things could be very interesting. Thoughts on Bronxville, Mars?
Yeah, I mean, up front, they absolutely dominated. I feel like they were getting directly to the linebackers against Pleasantville last week. They were getting to the second level, to the third level with ease, right? And it feels like that's kind of what you have to follow, that same trend. I don't think you need to be throwing the ball all across the field, especially when you have these big hogs up front that can move bodies, right? And I feel like if they do that again, they follow in that same mindset, like you said, have heavier formations, play action out of that, and you're going to make some big-time plays. And I feel like that's what Bronxville's bread and butter should be every week, not just against Pleasantville. It should be what their game plan should be every single time, and find ways to get your playmakers in space. That's always, I feel like, the easiest but hardest thing to do in a football game.
Yeah. All right. Now, guys, we're going to do something new this time around. I hope you guys like it. We're going to bring up some film, and I'm going to talk about Pelham's offense and Bronxville's offense, just a couple plays each, just to kind of show you what kind of style they play with, and then how things can open up. So let me open things up here, guys. All right, so Mars, can you guys see? Are we all set here?
Yeah, we're all good.
Perfect. All right, guys. So first thing I want to start with Pelham, the road team. And I mentioned they can attack you in different ways. They like to condense formations. They like to do the spread. And the first one is that spread. You can see they got trips on one side, single receiver down here. And the focus is to kind of empty the box. You can see they got 7 guys in the box here offensively. To the defense, they got 6. And that's where they want to win on that advantage. They have an athletic quarterback in there. You're going to see they're going to run a quarterback counter, running back going one way, quarterback's going to come the other way. They're pulling linemen. And that first purpose is to get these linebackers here to step in one direction, right? They want to step towards the running back, which they do. You could see there, which opens things up for the quarterback, right? And it's a simple play, but this is something that they're going to do. They're going to attack you multiple ways. One is in the spread, empty the box, get their athletes in space. And you can see nice down blocks going here. The lineman coming across, nice kick out. Quarterback probably could have went inside here, but he sees all this open green. He gets to the outside. You can see wide receivers blocking downfield, although better keep those hands inside a little bit more, or referee might throw a flag. But you can see a really nice job of utilizing space, seeing the spread attack, and using his athleticism to get to the outside. Another play, when we talk about Pelham, they'll do this. And they can do this from anywhere on the field. They'll come out with 2 tight ends, 3 backs. But the thing I want you to know, and again, this is in the red zone this time, but they can, again, bring this out at any moment, is they do these cross flows where you're going to see you got 3 backs. And the big question is for these linebackers and even some of these defensive linemen, if they read any backs, is which back do you read? Do you read the fullback? Do you read this third back? Do you read the tailback? And they're going to want them going in different directions to mess with the defense. And you're going to see they're going to try to do some double teams up to the backer. This tight end, I believe, is supposed to down block right here as this fullback kicks out this first man over the tight end. And they want to keep this tight. But you're going to see these running backs go in different directions to mess with the linebackers. And you see it right there. Right, this guy goes this way. They're trying to mess with some of these linebackers. The guy gets the ball inside here. But this is what I like. They have some talented backs. Right? This defensive lineman breaks through right away. It's one-on-one in the backfield. Look at that quick move right there. And then finds his way into the end zone. So the mix between showing the physicality from Pelham and this kind of heavy set looks is how I believe Pelham, that's how they want to run their offense. They will pass the ball when they need to, but the physicality up front and running the football is where things are, where they want to go with things. Now let's go to Bronxville. And we mentioned they had such an impressive performance last week. I think you're going to see similar things. You got 2 backs, 1 tight end. They want to run with physicality. They think their linemen can move people. And you're going to see this is just power football. You're going to see just power football. They're going to be pulling a lineman. You're going to see some down blocks here, getting up to the second level. And watch the movement. I mean, they just, again, creating this wave, winning their one-on-one matchups. And you're seeing this fullback getting to the second level, this lineman getting to the second level. And for a guy like Davis Patterson running the football, I mean, you get this kind of space. This is big trouble. And so that's what Pelham has to deal with. They're going to have to go up against these big linemen and win these one-on-one matchups. But Bronxville's going to want to ground and pound and get guys like Davis Patterson to the second level where you could see his elusiveness and his speed. Now, if they can run the ball, get ahead of the chains, what does that open up? What I just talked about, the play action. You can see once again, 2 tight ends, 2 backs, and now look at the box. It's very heavy. A lot of guys near the line of scrimmage. And now they're going to do play action out of it. They have a young quarterback. Want to make things easier for him. Get him out of the pocket. Right? Look at the fake. Look at all the linebackers stepping up. And now the tight end squeezing right behind him. And you got these big tight ends with large frames. It needs a nice target for the quarterback. Open up. Nice throw. I think if Bronxville can do this, opening things up, early downs, I think you're going to see them make some big plays in the running game. And in the passing game off of play action. All right, Mars. I'm going to let you go first since I just gave a whole spiel here. Who do you think wins and why?
I feel like this is one of those games, and we call this obviously our game of the week for a reason, right? And we say, hey,
And we have a couple other game
Pelham
of the
has been
weeks,
on a
but this
roll.
is the small school one.
Yeah. This is one of the game of the weeks we picked, right? But you have Pelham that has been. I feel like a lot of people didn't think Pelham would be as good as what they're showing, right? I feel like a lot of people were overlooking Pelham. I know you kind of mentioned that Pelham was one of your under the radar teams in the beginning of the season, but Pelham, a lot of people from Lowood to many others didn't think that Pelham would be showing this type of, I guess you'd say momentum. But they have a lot of offensive weapons and a lot of ways in which they can hurt you. And I feel like that's such a dangerous team to have and be. And especially because most of the B teams are predominantly a defensive squads. And I feel like when they can have all these different shifts and different types of quarterback play that it really can change things up. And their offensive line is pretty big up front. That's going to be a big deal, right? But then you look at Bronxville, and Bronxville was kind of walking into this season coming off as being, hey, we won Class C, and now, we're back in B again. And a lot of people were saying, well, including us, that they're walking in with a lot of their returning starters back, right? Because they were a young team last year, and they were going to be dangerous. And last week, they showed you how dangerous they could be. I don't think they were really complicated last week. They stuck to really simple plays, but they executed them to perfection. And I feel like when you look at what these two teams have and what they're capable of doing, I think that Bronxville is going to win this game. I feel like Bronxville has a lot of momentum. They showed up into Pleasantville and they showed out, right? And now they're going back home. Pelham's going to drive into Bronxville. It's going to be packed. It's going to be wild. And I feel like Bronxville's momentum, especially with the guys up front that can really hold it down, whether it's offensive or defensively, I feel like they have a lot of weapons on this squad that can make some noise. And it's really going to be up to the Hogs up front to really open up the lanes. But I feel like last week they proved that they could do it. Now, I think you're going to go up against a bigger front in Pelham, right, than you did against Pleasantville. But it's going to be the question of the day for me, right? Whether or not the Hogs can really clear out the same pathways as they did against Pleasantville, but now against Pelham. But I'm going to go with Bronxville here.
Yeah, and again, the matchup for me is this Pelham defensive front seven versus this Bronxville offensive line and tight ends with these backs and Patterson Formato. Who wins that matchup? I think Bronxville does, and I think Bronxville wins the game because of that. I'm going to go with Bronxville, so I agree with you. All right, guys, that was that. We're now going to A. I see a couple people throwing some things around. How does this affect Halled's legacy? Hesham, I think you need to clarify. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can we see some Westlake? We talked about Westlake. We only do it for, again, the show could be 5 hours long if we show tape of everybody. So we just focus in on 2 or 3 games a week. So that was one of them. We spoke about Westlake, though. Maypec is the best team. Uh-oh. I mean, they're playing Somers. I think Somers might have some issues with there, but we'll see on that. Where's Westlake at? We spoke about them. Let's move now, Mars, to A. And again, guys, appreciate it as always. Make sure you're letting us know who you think wins as we talk about these games. We have A now up on the board. And let's talk about...
Also, hit that thumbs up and subscribe, guys, if you haven't done so yet.
Absolutely. That's why I got Mars here to help plug.
Apparently, Frank is winning by... He's got 68% of the poll.
Our viewers know. They know, man. They know. They're smart people.
I mean,
our viewers are smart people.
Let's go my way this week.
Let's go with the next one. And we have a non-league matchup, and that is Eastchester 2-0 at Fox Lane, who's 0-1. Eastchester, they won 14-13 versus Nyack. And Fox Lane, they lost 24-19 at Mayapack. And when I look at this game, another very interesting matchup. Non-league game, but these crossovers are important when it comes to seeding. I'm going to go with Eastchester. Listen, Fox Lane offense had a very slow start. They started to open things up in the passing game. I think they will run the ball a little bit better. Eastchester struggled with giving up some big pass touchdowns. I think they sure that up this week. Eastchester can run the ball, and what I really like, this defense really makes a lot of plays. I mean, they've only allowed 19 points in the first 2 games. Really been becoming a fan of Dylan Burbridge, who's a quarterback and linebacker for them. Keep an eye on Vin Ciafoni and Martucci. Those are big play guys on the offensive side and defensive side. I'm going to go with Eastchester, Mars. Don't be surprised this is a low-scoring game, but both offenses running into some tough defenses, but I am going to go with Eastchester this one.
Yeah, I see. This was a really close one for me, and I feel like I agree with you. It's going to be a really close game overall because I feel like both teams have that scrappy mentality to them, and I feel like East Chester is going to win this game mainly because I feel like their defense is at a higher level. Right, I feel like they have been proven to be very stout, very aggressive, and Fox Lane since last week we saw they start out slow. Right, and I feel like that could be a issue for them just because they, obviously are gonna if they start out slow, Eastchester can kind of pull away, and now you're playing against the clock, right? And I really don't see Eastchester's defense easing up in the second half of the game, so I'm gonna go with Eastchester.
Yeah, and I think that's what hurt them last week. They clawed their way back, but they got in too big of a hole, and time became a huge factor. Let's talk the next one, Mars. This is a league game in the A matchup. Nyack 0-2 at Harrison, who's 1-1. Nyack lost 13-14 at Eastchester. Harrison won 23-13 versus Clarkstown South in a nice bounce back game. Now, this is, again, another interesting one to me. This could be the upset watch, and I'll tell you why. Harrison got off to a very strong start running the football. The offensive line stepped up, like I called them out last week, Mars. They showed up. And, Joe Krupe had 170 yards and 2 touchdowns right out of the gate. I mean, he was having a tremendous year. He gets hurt. Don't know his status. If he doesn't play, that's a major, major loss for Harrison. Now, they do have Dante Lanza back, who is another key player for them. He played last week, and now it's going to be reliant on this quarterback in Badner and this defense to really stop things. Nyack has a lot of speed, and they make a lot of big plays in the passing game, which have hurt Harrison these first 2 games. With that said, Nyack has also given up a lot of big plays in the running game. So, to me, I think Harrison does enough. I don't know the status of Krupe, but this could be a scary game at times because Nyack has talent. They kept it very close versus Eastchester. Harrison, defensively, the guys up front, Balidimaj, Haynes, Marisi, they're going to have to dominate. And guys like Dante Lanza and Pasnick, who had an INT last week on the back end, are going to have to keep things in front of them. I think they do, but this is going to be a scary game for Harrison. I'm going to go with Harrison, though.
Yeah, see, this was tough because I agree with you. When injuries start piling up, and especially because a team that has a lot of talent, but they also don't have a lot of depth, right? That's going to be a major, not flaw, but a major, a scary thing for them because now, especially when you need someone to step up, the question is going to be who will it be? And I feel like Harrison being at home, right? I feel like they still have enough talent to really push the line to be able to get some running lanes and really show out what they can do. And like I said, against South, they had a great showing. And I mean, off the bat, passing the ball around, like moving the ball around, it was very effective. So I feel like I'm gonna go with Harrison here. I feel like even with the injury concerns, I feel like they'll still be able to pull this off.
All right, let's go to the next one. And this is an AA crossover non-league game. We have Clarkstown South 1-1 at Ossining, who is 1-0, and Clarkstown South lost 23-13 at Harrison. Ossining won 30-15 versus White Plains. And when I look at Clarkstown South, offensively, they hit a couple big pass plays. They like to spread things out, dump the ball off to different receivers, struggle to run the ball consistently. I think that changes this time around. Ossining, again, they gave up, I think, 3 20-plus yard runs last week. So there are holes that Ossining needs to shore up. I think Clarkstown South takes advantage of that. Now, defensively, they gave up a lot of rush yards, and Ossining rushed for over 200 yards last week, and guys like Ibarra and Ramirez. But Clarkstown South has some big targets in Jake Teetle. They're running back in Mason Reddy. And look for this defense to, I think they're going to play a little bit better in the front 7. I think they slow Ossining down enough. I'm going to go with Clarkstown South in the victory.
Yeah, I feel like this is definitely close because you have Ossining that obviously has a fantastic run offense, right? And then what they can really do.
And they can get after the quarterback with Aiden Moore, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like this is a really interesting matchup between both these teams. But I do agree with you. I feel like South is gonna lessen the big plays, right? Limit the the mistakes they have in the front 7, and that will kind of give them at least a little bit more of a consistency in their defensive fronts, and then allow for the offense to get more opportunities. And I feel like South is going to bounce back on this one. I'm going to go with South.
JT said he meant to pick Mars. He can't change it. Unfortunately, yeah, JT. Right. Now I got your vote.
Mistakes happen. It's okay, man. We all.
Well, no, one of them is not meant for me.
Clearly, 68% of the vote is a lot of mistakes are being made, so it makes sense.
Let's go to the next matchup, and it's a league matchup. We have Clarkstown North 1-1 at Rye, who is 2-0. Clarkstown North lost a shootout, 43-38 versus John J. Cross River. Rye won 48-22 versus East Ramapo. And again, both offenses come in pretty hot. Clarkstown North, like I mentioned, they scoring 38 points. They really, dominated running off tackle, running off the edge, the quarterback rollouts, and then doing some of these counters out of it in that wing T style. And Jake Kavanaugh had 247 yards total and 3 total touchdowns. And they have a couple weapons in Sion Berry, Gabai, Garcia, that really made a lot of plays last week. The question, though, is defensively, Mars. They gave up a kick return touchdown, which Rye has played some pretty strong special teams so far to start the season, with guys like Fenton returning, and they had 400 yards given up. And you look at Rye, Mars, back-to-back 30-plus point games. They can beat you running. They can beat you throwing. Carson Boo Miller, 646 total yards, Mars, and 7 touchdowns in 2 games. So they gave up a boatload of pass yards last week. You have the weapons in Kessner, Hess, Schumacher, Fenton, and then your running game in Luliano. I feel like this is going to be a real tough test for this Clarkstown North defense. They have to play a lot better if they're going to upset in this way. I think Rye defensively will do enough to keep everything contained and not give up as many big plays in the running game. I am going to go with Rye. You guys got Steinman, Sass, Brady, very active on this defense, along with some of the other guys I mentioned. Rye just has too much, I think. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Clarkstown North. I'm going Rye.
Yeah, what's crazy is that with all everyone you're mentioning, it's like we're seeing the greatest show on turf for the for the section 1A, because it's just like everyone here is a playmaker. I mean, Carson Boo Miller has been very impressive.
Yes.
Overall, just doing so much. And it's honestly outrageous when you start looking at the stat lines of what he's able to do in just the first 2 games. But like you already mentioned, there's just so many guys like Luliano was fantastic last year. He's only showing that he's a continuation of what he's doing, right? And now it's just like you have so many people to worry about if you're Clarkstown North. And defensively, they obviously lost 43-38. So defensively, they need to limit the big plays.
Yes.
With Rye having both the stout offense and defense, it just feels like it's too much, and I feel like Rye's going to win this game, so I'm going to go with Rye.
Let's go to the next game. We have Lakeland, who is 0-2 at Yorktown, who's 1-1. Lakeland lost 13-0 versus Brewster. Yorktown lost a very close game, 16-12 at Somers. And I'll tell you this, Lakeland, listen, they're offensively struggling a little bit, especially the finish drives. They're going to be handling different pressures all over the place from Yorktown, who is very aggressive defensively. They had 2 turnovers last week. If they're going to stay in this game, they have to play a clean game. Now, they have some good size up front on that offensive line. Can they get the running game going? Defensively, it's all about this secondary. Yorktown likes to pass the ball. They're going to try to sling it all over the field. How your secondary handles some of these skill guys is going to be key. Nick Oliva is going to have to play a huge role in that front 7. Running around in space. But Yorktown, to me, Mars, I'm going Yorktown. They show that they not only belong upon the top, but they are one of the contenders, clear-cut contenders. They had the lead on Somers and gave it up at the end. And I was just very impressed with them. I know offensively you got Caden Glenn, right? 2 touchdowns last week. Tyler Galante making big plays all over the field as a receiver. But defensively, they get after it. They made Somers uncomfortable, and I know they gave up that touchdown at the end there, on a long drive, but they only allowed 1 offensive touchdown from Somers to keep that. They gave up a special teams touchdown, was the other touchdown. Hunter, Bowen, and then this defensive front of Desiderio, Schutler, Lohr. I mean, they have some guys who can make plays for you. JT Carney had an INT. Yorktown, I feel like they have a lot to build on. Now, don't be discouraged on the lot. This feels like a moment to grow, that, hey, we can compete. And now these are those games that you have to go and show, no, we're going to dominate. And I think they do. I'm going Yorktown.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with you, because the fact that Yorktown just had played so tough against Somers, and whether people want to say that Somers was just caught off guard, but I don't think so. I think Yorktown is a dangerous team in A, and I feel like their defense has been showing that, and the fact that their offense has the ability to move so well, especially in the passing game. I just feel like Lakeland's struggling too much on both sides of the ball currently, and I feel like because of that, I feel like Yorktown's going to have a big showing, especially in a game at home after a tough loss. I feel like they're going to want to show all out as much as possible just so that they can kind of stabilize that momentum again. So I'm going to go with Yorktown.
All right, let's go to the next one. Another league matchup. We have Brewster 1-1 at John Jay Cross River, who's 1-1. This one's very interesting. We're looking for teams. Like you have on one side, you have, again, Somers, Yorktown. Maypac is 2-0. Who are those next teams, right? And this is a matchup to me on that side that we'll start to see that. And Brewster, they won 13-0 at Lakeland. John Jay Cross River won 43-38 versus Clarkstown North. Brewster offensively, the question to me is, can they run the ball, right? It's very mixed. Now, Josh Walker, Walker had a strong performance last week with 84 yards rushing. You have some guys in Fakara, Nick Smith, Sanchez, Paul Rienzi, who they're active on both sides of the ball. But to me, John Jay Cross River really struggled to stop the run, especially off the edge. And can Brewster take advantage of that, right? That's going to be a big question to me. If it's going to be a passing game, I don't think it's suited for them. I think Brewster is bigger than Cross River. Can they show that physicality and kind of shorten the game a little bit? Because defensively, they've been pretty solid. Again, they had the shutout last week. I thought they were strong in week 0 for most of the game, got a safety. They have some guys who could be very active on the defensive side, but they can't get into a shootout. And when I look at Cross River, Mars, they have weapons all over. And I am going to go with Cross River. I've been impressed with their young quarterback, Currid. I thought he's made some big-time plays. You got guys like Machado, Ruiz, Ryan, and now Rinaldi at the running back spot really showed out last week. To me, what makes them nervous about them defensively, you have to be better defensively against the run and out on the edge. Because if you can give your offense some extra possessions, this is an offense that can light it up passing the ball. They're not a running team. They're not very big, but they use that short passing game as an extension of the run game. And for that, I think they make enough plays offensively that Brewster cannot match. And so I'm going John Jay.
Yeah, and I feel like John Jay, just like you said before, offensively just has so many ways to attack you. And, I feel like similar, that the Brewster Lakeland game is obviously, it's a rivalry game, 13-0 win is obviously good for Brewster. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like they have shown a strong front on the defense, but now you're going to be hit from all these different directions. And the question is going to be, how do you react to that? And especially because John Jay has such a high-powered offense that small, they could take something so small and make such big plays out of it and really just get quick points. And they showed that last week. It was a scoring fest. And John Jay, their defense really does need to step up against the run. They gave up so much yards in points in just from their defense that they feel like they need to kind of tighten that up, right? Because if they don't, then Brewster's going to stay in the game. And I feel like John Jay Cross River has just such a powerful offense. They need to just get their guys back on the field. So I'm going to go with John Jay Cross River here.
All right, Mars, let's go to our A game of the week, and that is Somers at Mahopac. Somers is 2-0 at Mahopac, who's also 2-0. League matchup. And let's start talking about Somers. Somers won 16-12 versus Yorktown. Mahopac won 24-19 versus Fox Lane. And, offensively, well, let's just say Somers is 4-0 versus Mahopac. But when these two teams play, this is this weird thing that Somers always starts off slow. Like, we've been covering the last couple of years, and we've watched this game every year. And it's this thing where Somers comes out and is just not fast. Now, they did this versus Yorktown. So I'm interested to see, do they kick off that rust after coming a high victory to offensively a very slow start? They felt discombobulated. They couldn't get consistency until the very end where they had the definitive drive to put them back on top. They have to come out faster because they're going to be on. They were home last time. They're going to be on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment. They have to come out faster. And what can help them is, listen, there's a lot of size that you're going to be up against in that front four for Mahopac. You want to try to, again, if they're not going to double Palazzolo, you got to take advantage of that. And if they are, that means they're going to take somebody out of the box, and then that's where you have to attack in the run game, using Iglesias' legs, using Kelly's legs towards the outside off the edge. This offensive line, to me, a lot of talk has been about this Mahopac defensive front. This offensive line, if they want to show, hey, we are one of the best offensive lines, this is that moment for them to try to dominate. But to me, the big thing is Iglesias using both his arm and his legs. He's a very athletic guy. Now, defensively, stopping the run is going to be the key for them. And they need to know personnel. That's my second key. So first key, I meant getting on the edge on this defense. The second key for Somers, in my opinion, to win, no personnel. Mahopac is a very personnel-based offense. They'll bring in 2 tight ends, and when those tight ends come in, the odds of the run game go up. Where is Maskell, number 5? Where is Clifford, number 7? The defense has to know where they are at all times, and that can shift things on how they play them because that's, they're going to see a lot of heavy sets. It's focused on the run game, but Mahopac likes to use personnel in certain areas to try to dictate things. And not enough defenses, I don't think, are keen on it. And Mapac takes advantage. And so Somers, I know they're looking at that kind of stuff. I'm interested to see how they play that. That's a big key for them. Mars, thoughts on Somers, and before I mention defensively, if they can, again, stop the run and force Mapac, who hasn't, they've been running the ball very well the first 2 weeks. I haven't seen them throw the ball a lot, right? They've thrown some, they've been efficient. If you can get them to be a throwing team, now your secondary, who had 2 INTs last week, can make plays. Thoughts on Somers, Mars? I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I feel like this is kind of like that same thing I said earlier in the show was, your goal is to make the opposing team uncomfortable. And it feels like Mapac was very comfortable when running the football, right? They didn't seem like they were wanting to pass the ball because they have these big guys up front and they could just open up lanes and run people over. But when they had a pass, it kind of felt like, that's where the most mistakes happen. And I feel like if you're Somers, you're saying, well, if they want to run the ball all the time, then we need to prevent that. And they have the size, they have the bodies to do it, right? But it's going to be a tough trick because you're playing against a really big Mapac team that it feels like there's something in the water because it feels like Mapac is becoming bigger and bigger. It's just incredible. We're both former Mapac graduates. We're not the tallest of human beings.
The water didn't get into our system.
Yeah, the water didn't get into our system, but the idea is that. Yeah, they're big ass kids over there, and Somers also has some big kids. So it's like, hey, it's going to be big on big, and who's going to take the advantage? That's going to be the big question.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Mapac. I mean, running the football. That's the key to them. To me, it's shorten the game. That's the number one key I have for their offense. They want to shorten the game, limit Somers' possessions. Right. Best defense, keep them on the sideline. Right. If you can control up front, control running the ball with Maskell and Clifford. You're bringing in 1 tight end sets, 2 tight end sets, 2 back looks. I think you're going to see a lot of that. And then if Somers starts really trying to bring pressure and they go into press man, maybe that's when you start taking those shots down the field, right? So those are kind of the big things on the offensive side. Another thing, when I look at defense and special teams, they could win special teams wise. I mean, Kyle Pinto is one of the best kickers in the class. He kicked a 41, yard field goal last week. This is a guy where even drive stall, you can get points out of, and kicking the ball off, punting the ball off, putting them in poor positions. Those are going to be some key things that Mapac can do. And this guy, Landon Varley, my God, he's had a real strong start to the season. Internally on the defensive side, he causes a lot of havoc in this one. Mars, matchup to watch, this Somers defensive front seven versus Mapac's run game, going to be a very interesting watch. Mars, thoughts on Mapac before I go to some film? I'm going to show both offenses.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously this front for Mapac is the biggest and one of the biggest I've seen in a long time, and they obviously are the cog to this team, right? I feel like if it's really up to the guys up front on the offense and defensive side that are really dictating the way this game is played. And I got to give a shout out to Varley. He committed to Ithaca, right? And I feel like it's a good program. And I saw it on
congratulations!
social media,
I didn't even know that.
Like, that's a big accomplishment. And now, you have a guy who's already committed, right? Going to a good D3 school. Hey, we're SUNY Cortland guys. We can respect.
Yeah, go Red Dragons, baby.
But yeah, go Red Dragons. But the idea is that they have talent up front and they have the ability to show that. And I feel like for them, it's like, you're right. Shorten the game. Keep everything in the trenches. And if they could do that, then I feel like they're going to have that advantage.
All right, guys, I'm going to just show some film now on Somers and Mapac. And give me a moment while I pull it up. And let's start with Somers as being the road team. And a big thing for Somers to me is, winning off personnel. We talked about Mapac's personnel, but for Somers, it's, the numbers game. How many guys are going to be in the box? How many guys are going to be out on the edge? And this is a good test on, hey, when we're going to run it, when we're going to throw it, and doing some tempo stuff, some hurry-up offense can actually dictate things. This was the definitive drive where they went in and scored, and they were moving at a faster pace. And you're going to see how Yorktown lines up, right? And so before I get started, you're going to see this guy down here, this stud receiver, the single receiver side, Palazzolo. He can draw a lot of attention for obvious reasons. He's a big-time player. He scored on a punt return earlier in the game. Yorktown knows they need to lock him up. Now, this is first down. And they're going to see 2 guys over the top of him on the bottom of the screen here. And because of that, look at how many guys are in the box. You have 6 guys in the box. And with this trips to the left, this guy's hanging off the tackle, acting kind of like a wing back. You got 8 guys in the box offensively. This is a win to run the ball and not a force player, really, on the line of scrimmage. So Somers sees that and says, hey, we got Mason Kelly. Let's run the ball here. And they're just going to run outside zone. A very simple play, but it's leveraged because of the stud that they have down here getting double teamed on first down by 2 guys opens things up in the running game. And you're just going to see, look at the blocking here. One-on-one blocking, getting up to the second level. Look at the blocking going on. And so a lot of talk about Mayapac's front and even Yorktown's front. This is offensive line dominating right here, right? And that's what Somers needs to do. Hey, we can win these one-on-one matchups and get Kelly. Look at him making these broken tackles here, right? So winning with numbers. You want to double? Okay, we'll run the ball and we'll run it off the edge if you got so much size inside. Now we go to the next play, and this is the go-ahead touchdown. And as this play develops, another big thing that I forgot to point out is moving Palazzolo around. You know, you can just park him as a single receiver side. It's easier to double him. Or you can put him on a 2-receiver, 3-receiver side and put him on the inside. And that's what Somers does right here. And you're going to see, now look at the guys in the box. They got 7 in the box. They bring in another guy. Now they don't have 2 guys on Palazzolo. You can see man-to-man, and he's going to make a break towards the inside. And when Iglesias gets comfortable, he can make some tremendous throws. He wasn't comfortable for most of the game, but on this last drive, he made the play he needed to. Here he is right here. They're making a slant to the inside. First starts with a good fake. And they want to get the fake here, get the linebackers to step up and look at that throw. There are 4 Yorktown bodies around. Watch that delivery there for a touchdown. I mean, that's big time. But again, now they load the box, one-on-one with Palazzolo. They take advantage of it. And I think that's what Somers is going to have to do. Now, when you look at Mayapack, and again, they love to bring in personnel packages. And the big key to them is number 7 and number 5. You have Maskell and you have Clifford. And they're going to bring in these 2 big guys at the tight end spot. You'll see them as tight end wings. It's really 2 tight ends. And they're going to say, we're going to outmuscle you. Right? If you don't line up correctly, if you're not aggressive in the secondary, we're going to run you over. And that's what they've done in the first 2 games. You see them both in the backfield here. You see these 2 tight ends come in. There's like a 70% chance they're going to run the ball, and probably more than 50% chance they're running it towards them. And you're going to see just power football. They're going to pull a guard. They're going to use Clifford as a lead blocker, get Maskell the ball, try to get him into space. And watch the movement here. Look at the movement here. Look at these down blocks sealing off the inside. And now you got 2 defenders here. You got 2 blockers here. And if you're going to hesitate and wait, they're going to take advantage of you. Again, nice block there by Varley. Now, the defender does a good job at dodging that one, but look at Maskell. He makes that first guy miss, and now it's one-on-one. And if you get him one-on-one, I like my chances on offense. But again, they try to use leverage. They try to use personnel packages to their benefit. And I say this because they'll move Maskell around. Here they come out again. Now you see different numbers. You don't see 84. You don't see 85. But you do see number 5 and number 7. And look at number 5 here as a number 3 receiver. Right? So they're going to move guys to try to give them an advantage at a certain spot. So they got 3 receivers here, a single receiver here, and they want to get number 5 involved in space. Now they're going to make this look like a design play fake or a run pass option, but this is really a pass, right? Because this linebacker is going to settle, and normally when you settle, you're handing the ball off here, but they see this number 3 receiver. They want to get Maskell the ball. When he's lined up at the receiver spot, odds are the pass is a lot higher. And so that's where they're going. They want to go right here. The safety is cheating to the single receiver side. There's a lot of space over the middle. And so the defense doesn't take away that leverage. They get Maskell in space. Again, something strange going on in the coverage. He's dropping in the flats, but it looks like they're man here. And look at all that space in the middle. Finds the window, delivers it, and now you got Maskell one-on-one. I like my chances on offense. And that's what Mayapac's going to do. They're going to try to run power football and then create matchups with some of their personnel packages. And if a defense doesn't align to it, they'll take advantage of it. All right, Mars. Who's your pick? We had some people in chat saying Mayapack the best team in here. I think Char said it. Somers coming off that slow game, but they come out with a victory. Good teams find ways to win. Does Mayapack pull the upset?
This is tough. This is tough, man. I feel like when you look at this game, it's like one of those moments where, Mayapack has not had Somer's number in the last few years, and yes, it's been close games, closer than what a lot of people expected. And like you said, Somers, for some reason, whenever they play Mayapack, it feels like they are the slowest team in the first half, and
Yeah.
then
They pick
turn
things up.
There's a switch that turns on, and they go, "Oh wait, yeah, we're Somers," and then they start doing the Somers thing, and they win the game. Right? It feels like it's like clockwork, right? And
Yeah,
so,
well, it almost cost them last week.
yeah, it almost cost them last week when they did that. Now, granted, I feel like they might fall into the same problem again. I feel like they're going to slow up this game. They're going to say, "Hey, we beat Mayapack for the last,
Four times.
freaking 4 times they played each other," and they're going to overlook them. I mean, one thing I'll tell you is this: the Mayapack players, when they were asked at the media day, they asked, "Hey, who's your team you're looking forward to playing?" And almost all of them, I think almost all of them said Somers, right? They are looking for Somers. So you can tell that this has been marked on their calendars all year long. And for the Mayapack players, they're itching for that revenge, right? Because they've been losing to them so often. It was almost like that moment where Mayapack had beaten Harrison and they had the Jets coaches come out and say, hey, they won and everything and all that stuff. Because that was something that they haven't been able to do, and Harrison got that win on them. They felt like they got their revenge. So I feel like for Mayapack, this becomes more of like a statement game, right? What they can do and show what they are. And I'll be honest, maybe I'm gonna break some hearts or I'm gonna scare some people over in Tusker Nation, but I'm gonna go with Mayapack. I think you're playing it at home. I feel like the momentum has been on Mayapack's side. They have the biggest kids I've ever seen in the program. Like the water has changed human beings, and now you have a offense that's simplified, right? You have an offense that says we're going to run you over, and I feel like their size, and it's not just 5 guys are big. They got like 7 or 8, 9 guys that are humongous. So it's like there's one thing if you have just only first set of line that could do it, but now you have a tight ends, wings that are also giant. So it just feels like they're going to try to outman Somers to the outside and get their key players in space. I don't necessarily think Mayapack needs to throw a lot to win the game if they started establishing the run. And the most important thing is to slow the game down, right? And like I said this before, if Somers starts out slow and Mayapack slows the game, like just, particularly owns the time of possession, that's all you need to do to win the game, right? That's all you need. So I feel like for Mayapack, they got nothing. It's almost like that they're flying under the radar because Somers is so good that everyone's like, oh, Mayapack, whatever. But I have a feeling Mayapack might pull an upset, and I feel like Somers might get caught off guard. So I'm going to go with Mayapack here.
Listen, I'm going to just say this. Somers, I think, is a more talented team. I think they've had slow starts versus Mayapack before. I think they had their slow start versus Yorktown last week, which almost cost them, especially offensively. Defensively, they played strong. Offensively, they came off to a slow start. They can't do that again. And if, to me, now, like, you're hearing the whispers that maybe Rye is the best team in A, I'm curious to see Somers reestablish themselves. Like, hold on, wait a minute. We are still the dominant team in A. And games like this on the road where people think, oh, maybe Somers is beatable. Maybe they're not as good as what people are saying. Maybe these are those moments where it's like, no, we're going to show ourselves. I think this could be that, and I'm going to go with Somers. All right, Mars, let's go to the final stretch here. We are now in Double A. I appreciate you guys, as always, tuning in. I know so many people coming in and out. We appreciate you. Look at the comments. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Any questions, throw them into the chat. If you have them, we'll answer them at the end. Let us know what games you're going to win, and make sure you vote. I think I'm kicking Mars's butt, 68%, guys. Our viewers are very smart. They think I'm going to win in picks this week. Well, Mars is picking Mayapack. He's going for broke right now.
There's a lot of mistakes out there. I'll tell you that much.
All right, let's keep it going, Mars. First one I want to talk about. We got North Rockland 1-1 at Mamaroneck, who's 1-1. North Rockland won 31-6 versus Arlington. Mamaroneck lost 21-10 versus Scarsdale. And I tell you what, I'm a little nervous about Mamaroneck because offensively, they've struggled to finish drives. It's been very consistent on the offensive side of the ball, and North Rockland has struggled to defend the run. Can Mamaroneck show that they can run the ball? I mean, this offensive line really needs to step up and open up some holes, because if it's going to get into a passing matchup, North Rockland has a lot of talented secondary players. I think it's going to be tough. You're going to see some interceptions. If they got to just sling the ball all over the place, throwing it, they need to establish a consistent running game at some point, and it starts with this veteran offensive line that needs to step up defensively, struggle to stop the run. They have to be able to limit plays. With all this going on, I'm going to go with North Rockland. I think they're playing some better football right now. Now, later on in the season, we can come back to this because I do have faith in Mamaroneck. I picked them, obviously, to go pretty far. But with Jaquan Johnson having back-to-back 100-yard games and touchdowns, this defense, if they can get you throwing the football, secondary makes a lot of plays. St. Fleur had 2 INTs last week. He has been all over the field, and guys like Javon Lawrence. I'm going to go with North Rockland on the road to win back-to-back big games this week.
Now, it's what's funny about this is that North Rockland basically made me look like a fool. I think I picked against them last week when with Arlington, and they torched my pick. I think live in front of everyone, and they really were efficient. They were able to run the ball to, like you said, 224 yards. They had no turnovers. They basically were. They're just efficient, right? And I feel like that's something that North Rockland struggled with the last few years. And now that when they are back to that mentality of the old North Rockland of being a very good defensively and the secondary always being tough, running the ball downhill and being efficient, I mean, that's a dangerous team. Mamaroneck, like you said, had a really tough time against Scarsdale. And obviously now, like you said, it's going to be really dependent about their offensive efficiency. Are they going to be able to throw the ball and actually have a multi-tiered offense that both run and pass can mix around? And I think I'm going to go with North Rockland because momentum's on their side. They have the size, they have the, I guess you say the efficiency and lack of mistakes. And I feel like that's going to be a tough trick to, it's tough to not make mistakes that often, especially back-to-back games. But if North Rockland can do it, I think it's going to be a big win for them.
Let's talk about another league matchup. We have Ketchum 1-1 at White Plains, who's 0-1. Both these teams are coming off a loss. Ketchum lost 21-14 in a very good game versus Yonkers Forest. White Plains lost 30-15 at Ossining. And, in this game, I'm gonna go with Ketchum. And listen, Nick Sexton is a tremendous player for White Plains. Had multiple runs of 20+ yards. Guy can really bust the game open. So Ketchum definitely has to keep him in check. I think their quarterback Fitzsimmons, who faced a lot of pressure last week, I think you're going to see a bounce back game from him. And White Plains gave up 230 yards, over 230 yards rushing last week. Look for Ketchum to have a little bit more of a running game to create a more balanced attack. I'm going to go with Ketchum to win on the road.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to go with Ketchum. I feel like it was a battle against Forest, and I feel like they're going to try to establish the run game, especially against White Plains defense that has been struggling so far. And I feel like because of that, I think Ketchum is going to win in White Plains. This is another
interesting one to me. Double A league matchup. John Jay's Fishkill 0-2 at Scarsdale, who's 1-0, and John Jay's Fishkill lost 45-34 at Carmel. And Scarsdale won 21-10 at Mamaroneck. For John Jay, it's hard to judge John Jay because of such the highs and lows. This was a tale of two halves. In the first half, they were losing 33-7. Second half, they were carving up the Carmel defense and had an opportunity to get really back into the game. So it's like, which East Fishkill team are we going to see offensively? Because, again, when they're on, their quarterback Patridge had 3 total touchdowns, threw for 246 yards. They have multiple weapons. Nate Johnson was someone who stood out. But defensively, Mars, they gave up over 450 yards to Carmel. And I know Carmel's a strong offense, but they also gave up a boatload to Shaman on the week prior. So over 200 yards rushing, 250 yards passing. Now they're not facing a prolific pass offense in Scarsdale, but this is a Scarsdale offense that can run the football. So can East Fishkill match that? I'm not sure they can. I think Scarsdale is going to shorten this game. It does make me nervous about Scarsdale. They did give up some big pass plays last week, and John Jay can definitely take advantage. They showed that they can throw the ball around when they're playing efficiently and have a bunch of man beaters. So to me, Ebner, Boris, Gilligan, and Brennan running the ball for Scarsdale, shorten the game, and a couple big plays by Mike Vibert at the wide receiver spot. I think Scarsdale wins a very close one at home.
Yeah, see, I'm going to stick with John Jay's Fishkill. I feel like I picked them last week against Carmel, and
you were picking the second half East Fishkill, not the first half one.
Yeah, I'm picking the second half one because when I picked John Jay's Fishkill, I looked at the first half and I was like, oh man, this is rough. But then watching them kind of bounce back, it kind of got me saying, you know what, it's like you said before, it feels like they kind of almost had to wake up in the second half, and maybe that momentum of them saying, "Hey, we finished the game strong," can get them to kind of continue that against Scarsdale. And I feel like playing against Scarsdale is all about responsibility football, and knowing your role and knowing what you need to do against Scarsdale. That's is really 90% of the battle, right? I'm not saying Scarsdale can't handle John Jay's issue, because it can, but the idea is that I feel like as long as John Jay can do what they're supposed to do, be disciplined, they have the offensive capability to score a lot of points. It's just slowing down Scarsdale and putting them in a negative position where they now have to go into their passing game. And that's where you can cause them to have some mistakes and get your offense back on the field. And when that happens, I feel like they can get some points. So I'm going to go with John Jay's Fishkill here to do that.
Next up, we got a league game, New Rochelle 0-2 at Arlington, who's 0-2. And boy, this feels like must win for both teams, doesn't it? I know it's very early in the season, but both teams need to get momentum on track. New Rochelle lost 38-18 at Suffern. Arlington lost 31-6 at North Rockland. Both these offenses at times can look strong. Both times they can run the ball. You got Maples, Morales, Fernand at the quarterback spot for New Rochelle. Offensively for Arlington, you got Russo, who also had a strong game last week. The question to me is the consistency in the pass attack, right? Both sides on offense had been a struggle, and even more of a struggle is defensively. I mean, Arlington has given up 66 points in 2 games. And for New Rochelle, they really struggled giving up big plays versus Suffern last week. I mean, who can play more consistent defense is going to be a key in this one. So I'm looking at both these defensive front sevens to try to slow down the run game and make this a passing fest and see which pass offense can make plays. We know guys like Tuttle on Arlington can make big-time plays, but New Rochelle has some skill guys who can make some big plays in the passing game. To me, though, it's who plays better defense this time around. Both teams have really struggled to really defend anything. There's something off defensively about both teams. But for me, with that being said, in a somewhat even keel, I'm going to go with the home team. I think Arlington at home, these are the kind of games they need to win to turn things around, right? They were home on Week 0, a tough Newburgh team, they got their butts kicked. They go to North Rockland, close game for a little while, then they get their butts kicked. They need to play better. Both teams do, but to me, this feels like a prime opportunity for Arlington to shore some things up, win this game, and get back on the winning track. I'm going Arlington.
Yeah, I feel like I'm also going to agree. I feel like Arlington has a size. They had some bad losses right the last 2 weeks, and they always say it's always tough to have bad losses twice in a row, but they did. And now the question is going to be, and I said this earlier in the show, it's about stopping the bleeding, right? You're back at home, right? It's in front of your home crowd. You have the size and the capability of doing some heavy sets to try to get some run game going.
Yeah.
But the question is going to be about defensive ability, right? Can you kind of slow down New Rochelle? Can you really try to really control the time of possession and get your guys feeling in a groove? Like when Arlington slows down the game and they control the time of possession and they just own up front, that's their bread and butter. Like, that's what they could do, and they can really run downhill and get some yards here. I'm also going to agree. I'm going to go with Arlington.
Let's go to the next game. We have East Ramapo 0-1 at Mount Vernon, who's 0-2. This is a league matchup. East Ramapo lost 48-22 versus Rye. Mount Vernon lost 34-28 versus Yonkers Brave in a very good game. This is another interesting one to me. Mount Vernon, listen, offense, they showed that they can move the ball. They put up a lot of yards. They scored a bunch of points, but the turnovers were killer. They had a couple big ones. Defensively, they struggled against the run, and so for that, I'm going to go with East Ramapo. I know against Rye, they also gave up way too many big pass plays. They need to shore some things up. They want to be a pressure defense, but they have to play better on the back end. Way too many big touchdowns, major yards given up in the air, but they showed that they can run the ball. They had 230 yards rushing. Osborne had 162. Pierre had 70. They had 3 touchdowns between the two. I think East Ramapo runs the ball better. I think they shore up some things on the back end. It's tough playing Rye out of the gate when they're super hot. But I am going to go with the East Ramapo team to win this one.
Yeah, I'm also going to agree. I feel like East Rampo, I mean, granted, they struggled defensively against Rye for sure, but they actually showed some moments of offense of capability to really be able to make some plays, right, and get some run offense going. Right, they had over 230 30 yards rushing, and I feel like that's going to be something that they have to kind of pride themselves in and kind of continue that. And I feel like they actually have some speed on their offense. So I feel like with that, Mount Vernon already struggling quite a bit, and not just being efficient, especially with turnovers. I feel like that's going to allow for East Rampo to make some plays, especially on the defensive side, and then get back on offense and score some points.
Let's get to the second to last game and one of the big games of the year. And that is a AA league matchup, rivalry matchup. We have the Yonkers Brave 2-0 at the Yonkers Force, which is 1-0. And a lot of kudos. I think it's the first time these two teams have combined to be 3-0 since the program started. So a lot of kudos to both coaches and both programs. And Yonkers Brave, they won 34-28 versus Mount Vernon. Yonkers Force won 21-14 versus Ketchum, or at Ketchum, excuse me. And I tell you what, this is another interesting matchup, Mars. Yonkers Brave, they showed that they can run the ball, and keep an eye on this name, Kiba Kisei. And if I said it wrong, I do apologize, so let me know if I did say it wrong. But this young man, 147 yards total last week and 3 touchdowns, back-to-back over 100-yard games. Yonkers Braves like to spread things out and run the football, and he has been a huge part of this. Now, defensively, they've given up a ton of yards, but what they do is they're a real bend but don't break, and they want to force turnovers. The question is, they can't give up a lot of big plays because Yonkers Force, Mars, with guys like Fields, who had 2 touchdowns, their wide receiver in Testamark, these are guys who can break a game open with their speed. With this being said, I am going to go with the Force. They are at home. They have won 4 straight versus the Brave. They're 5-1 overall. The combination between their quarterback and Fields, who's a dual threat guy, had over 100 yards rushing last week, with some of these skill guys, defensively, they were pretty strong against the run last week versus Ketchum. Can they continue that? I think they do. I think they slow it down just enough. I'm going Yonkers Force.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Yonkers Brave, and I feel like this is obviously one of the big games that me and you have been looking at because of the fact that they both programs obviously the first time they've been 3-0, and since they've been combined, and I feel like that's a great accomplishment within itself. But I feel like with Brave, and I know kind of the key thing you're thinking about is defense, and are they and they have these offensive weapons that they really can make a lot of big plays. But I feel like Brave also has that ability to kind of they can make a lot of moves, they can make a lot of points out of nowhere. And the biggest question is going to be about their defense. Like they need to limit the big plays. They need to limit the yards and limit the scores. But they need to continually force turnovers because they did have that last week. It's going to be a test on their defense if they're going to be consistent. But I'm going to go with Brave.
Finally, our last game of the week, and that is Carmel at Suffern. Carmel's 1-0 at Suffern, who is 1-1. This is a league matchup. Carmel won 45-34 versus John Jay. East Fishkill. Suffern won 38-18 versus New Rochelle. Again, this one is a really interesting one because when you look at Carmel, who, they've been a dominant team the last few years, and it's been a mix between a strong rush attack and strong defense. And they make plays in the passing game, but that's kind of been the formula, right? Offensively, they were tremendous. 464 yards on offense, Mars, and it was a balanced attack. They had over 200 yards rushing, over 250 yards passing. This offensive line, which was a big question mark, they did a good enough job up front. And, it all starts, to me, there's 2 fixers in this game. I call them fixers, right? And what that means is when things go wrong and someone needs something fixed, like on offense, that's W and that's Jep Joseph. W, Werlew for Carmel, and Jep Joseph for Suffern. They are fixers at the running back position. Because when things go wrong, they make things go right. Those are like little mafia things, but that's what they can do for your offense. And I'll show some film about it in a little bit. But W had 3 touchdowns, 2 of them rushing, 1 of them receiving, and their quarterback in McGorry. That was a question. He was a young quarterback coming in. They graduated quarterback last year. 4 touchdown passes. He was really strong. I mean, he was efficient with the ball. He was decisive with the ball. And then you saw a young man in Aiden White really come on the scene, receiving 2 of those, one of them showing his speed up the sideline, also had an eye on T in defense. So to me, Carmel's offense was sensational. Defensively, it was a tale of 2 halves. Really good in the first, really bad in the second. Now, they made the turnover at the end, but dudes were running wide open. And so my question is, again, the number one focus, I have two keys. Number one, on offense, you're going to see a lot of heavy formations. I want to see them condense Suffern's defense. And last season, when they played in the playoffs, Suffern could not stop the run. And I want to see if they can do that again. Condense them, get this defense in tight, and then work the pitch action to W. So that this defense has to run sideline to sideline and use W to find open lanes, to hit the hole hard, and make major plays. And then the play action stuff out of it, the screen games out of it. That's going to be kind of the big thing. Condense these formations, run to the outside. My number two key for Carmel, Mars, defense has to stop the run. They have to do a better job communicating on the back. They got to slow down Jeff Joseph, but Palumbo on Suffern has shown that he can throw the ball. You cannot give up wide open pass plays like they did last week. Thoughts on Carmel, Mars?
Yeah, I feel like obviously from the offense perspective, it was a showcase. I mean, they were scoring left and right. And by halftime, you thought the game was automatically over. Right, you thought they were going to start doing the running clock soon. But the question was then, what the hell happened with the defense? And that essentially had John Jay's Fishkill had crawled themselves back into the game, and now a lot of people, the Carmel Crazies, were getting nervous, thinking that, oh wow, we might lose, right, or it's getting close. It could get to that point. And I feel like that's going to be really the question. Like, was it because Carmel was easing up and they just allowed for John Jay to get back in? Did they lose focus? Did they overlook John Jay? And that's what happened. Who knows, right? But the question is going to be, how does Carmel start the game? How do they finish the game? It's the full story of Carmel. How do they go about doing this? I feel like that's going to be the big question for me, because Waterloo is obviously a dominant player.
Yep.
And obviously seeing McGorry kind of step into that, into the big position, the quarterback position, and really show out is a great sign from an offense perspective. Defensively, what are they going to be, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to be the first half Carmel or the second half Carmel?
Suffern, I mean, it starts with the running game. Obviously, Jeff Joseph had 110 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. They want to get him the ball, get him to that second level, because, again, you're going to see in a very aggressive defensive front seven from Carmel. They like to blitz off the edges. They like to, again, squeeze these linemen down. Can they create that lane and get him past that first level? Because once he gets to that second level, he's hard to stop. So can they get him past that initial push? He has very good vision. But their quarterback, Palumbo, can help, because the first two games that I've seen now, he's really stepped up. He had 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, made a couple big touchdown throws to Tehran. But I'm looking at this front, offensively and defensively, for Suffern. If they're going to beat a team like Carmel, it's that they win in the trenches. And a game like Shane Stallcup had 2 sacks in the fumble recovery. He plays a big spot on that offensive line. He is going to have to lead the way. They did not last year in the playoffs stop Waterloo at all. This time they're going to have to. Any quick thoughts, Mars, before I show the film, and then we'll get to our game picks for the last game?
I mean, Jeff Joseph is obviously a dominant player too, and like you said, he's a fixer for a reason.
He's a fixer.
And I feel like
two fixers
he is definitely somebody that has star caliber, and he can break plays out of nowhere. And that's why somebody from Carmel's defense is going to have to say, we can't let this guy just run shop on us, where we're going to have to slow him down in some way. But yeah, I mean, Suffern's got some really key weapons as well.
All right, Mars, our final film session here. And when I bring this up, I'm going to talk about the two fixers, and that is Tristan Waterloo and Jeff Joseph. And I'm going to start with Tristan Waterloo. And, I call him a fixer because, like I mentioned before, when things go wrong, they can make things go right. But let's just start with something that does go right, and that's these condensed formations. And you can see that they got to tighten up all these defensive players into one spot and then give W with some space. And I got to give a lot of credit here with the blocking up front. When they do this pitch, you're going to see they're going to shift over. They're going to motion guys. They're going to try to out-leverage you. And if the defense doesn't adjust, you're going to be outmanned. Carmel has done this now for the last couple years. And you can see they got the numbers here. You don't see any extra defenders shifting over to this side. And they're just going to outman you. They're just going to motion these guys. And you can see no defenders outside this hash mark. Right? So when they get this pitch going, they're going to try to get this defense running horizontally. Now you have this defender trying to come up, keep things inside. Really nice block out on the edge right there. But look at the lane that opens up. Because they didn't shift, because they're out leveraged, now you got W with a one-on-one with this linebacker on the inside and all this green grass. And if you know W, he can hit the hole hard. And you can just see the speed right here. I mean, he makes this look way easy, untouched. But this is a great block up front, sealing off the edge, and now it's W using his speed. I mean, we see that way too often, and they use formations to help that. Now, this is an example of him being a fixer. When things go wrong, here he is right here. You're going to see this play. and the snap rolls to him. It's not supposed to roll to him. It's supposed to roll to the quarterback, and it's not supposed to roll, right? But this looks to be like a quick little pass screen, right, to this number 2 running back here, or this H-back, if you want to call him, out into the flats. Problem is the ball rose to W, right? So that's not part of the plan. Now W tries to hand it back to the quarterback, realizes, oh my God, the defense is coming. And now watch what happens next. This is what's called fixer. Makes one guy miss, bulldozes another guy, and now he goes 70 yards, Mars, down the sideline. The camera can't even keep up with him. I mean, these are the moments where it's like a dead play, a major loss, drive killer most likely, and it ends up being a touchdown because you have a fixer. But there's another fixer out there, and that's Jeff Joseph of Suffern. Here he is right here, and we're going to show again his vision, his quick feet. He's very smooth. This is a zone play. Everyone's stepping to the right. This H-back is going to block backside. And when he gets the ball here, watch him maneuver through this pocket. He sees the opening to the outside, takes a little jump cut, then cuts back inside. Look at him get north and south, how fast that is. And he makes again, gets to that second level. He's hard to tackle. He's a big body kid, leading to a 40-plus yard run. And again, you're seeing nice blocking up front. Look at him use his vision, his feet, get north and south very quickly. And now the example of being a fixer. This is the same exact play, Mars. And as you know, as an offensive line guy, when you're running these zone plays, you want to get a lot of double teams. The most important thing is blocking the first level, right? Well, here's the problem. You run the same play, and no one blocks the D tackle. This looks like a dud, a 4-yard loss. But this is why you have a fixer. Look at him. Shimmy through that D tackle. Get to the second level. Watch him explode right here. Boom. Right out of the hole. What should have been a loss, what should have been 3rd and long, ends up being a 40-yard run. I mean, Mars, it's nice to have fixers on your team, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it makes life a lot easier. I mean, I can guarantee you that, I'm sure everyone in Section 1 or HVFL would love to have somebody that can say, hey, a broken play just happened. Let's just give it to this dude and let him make something out of nothing.
Yeah. All right, Mars. Who do you have and why?
This is obviously a really tough game. It's our game of the week. And, I mean, both these teams have fixers. They both have weapons that can really show out. And, I mean, they both have their prospective answers. I feel like if you pick Carmel, it makes sense. You pick Suffern, it also can make sense. And I feel like this is one of those games that are so close, whether it's Carmel, that's high-powered offense. But the one thing that gets me nervous about Carmel is the fact that they started out so fast, and then they slowed down and allowed for John Jay to get back into the game. And it almost feels like they eased up, right? And usually when you're the top dog, you have to have that killer mentality to end the game and finish it off, right? And I feel like they didn't do that last week, and it gets a lot of people concerned of whether or not is that a consistent thing or is that just a one-time thing. Yeah. I don't know, right? Suffering on the other hand, and yeah, they obviously gave us some points, 18 points against New Rochelle, but they feel like more of a team that looks like they're just going to keep pounding the rock and controlling the time of the game and just keep owning up front, right? And I feel like they're at home. I'm going to go with Suffern. I think Suffern has the ability to really have a really strong defensive front. I mean, they already know what the target is. The target's Waterloo, right? To say, all right, we're not letting W end the game. We're trying to slow down the fixer and try to get our defense, get our offense back on the field and try to get Jeff Joseph more opportunities. And because of the fact that Suffern's defense looks a little bit more efficient right now, that's the biggest reason why I'm calling for Suffern to win.
Again, this is a tough one for me. I'm going to say let's just cancel the fixers out for each other, which is hard to do because they're both dynamic. But for me, I'm going to go with Carmel. And the reason for that is I think they're closer to the first half defense than they are the second half defense. And if it's going to get to a passing game, again, Palumbo has really improved from last season. I think McGorry really showed some impressive instincts, making some big plays down the field. I think Carmel gets by an edge. I think this is going to be a very close game. It would not shock me if either team wins, but I am going to go with Carmel to win. All right, guys, that was it. Thank you guys so much. We went through all the games. We did some film for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, we had the poll, and 63% thinks Frank is going to win on the picks this week. A lot of smart viewers out there But as always, thank you guys so much. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe. If you missed anything, don't worry. This will be posted so you can rewind and go back to it. Also consider joining our Patreon, guys. It is, you get some added coverage. It really does support our group, and we thank our members as an important part of our community. With that said, Mars, we are going to sign off. I hope you guys enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you all very soon.